Animal welfare in Spain doesn't always go hand in hand, does it? Because there's so many stories and there's so much tradition with bullfighting.
People are buying homes, particularly here in Marbella. They might come here 3-4 times a year, but they think they can rent them out.
Yeah.
And they actually can't get licenses.
We always get a comment saying Spain's always hot in the summer. And like, you know, we don't, people go a bit crazy about this stuff, but.
The rest is Spain.
Don't forget to subscribe to The Rest is Spain on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.
Welcome to The Rest is Spain podcast by the Olive Press, brought to you by Staysure Expat Travel Insurance. I'm here with Walt Finch and John Clark. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Hi, good afternoon.
How are you?
See, you've been out in the sun with the sunglasses on your head, John.
I've been away on holiday, and I always have my sunglasses on my head, indeed.
I hope you haven't been buying them on the street corner.
I generally try and get proper sunglasses as a rule. I think my eyes deserve it. But no, they're definitely not for. You think it could be from a looky man by any
Basically, well, one of the stories I've seen this week was somebody got fined. I think it was in Mallorca for buying sunglasses from a street vendor. Did you do that story, Walt?
No, our journalist Alex Trulinski did this one, but it's a classic warning for tourists, or for anyone really, but especially tourists, because anyone who comes to Spain, as you know, you're going to get these guys selling stuff in the street, especially in the tourist areas. It could be handbags or
Looky
sunglasses. Man. They've got various names. Looky man is one. Generally, they're African guys, and it's quite tempting. You might want to pick up a nice little handbag that looks very, very realistic, legit. You know, like I don't know what kind of brands you have. Like
you got Prada,
exactly, all the top brands.
You could spend 20-30 euros and get a Gucci handbag.
Yeah.
And people seem to like that kind of stuff. And you also get these sunglasses and whatever else they sell. But one particular dude, and we don't actually know who received the fine, if it was a tourist or a local or whoever it was, what nationality. But in Palma, they got fined for buying sunglasses from one of these guys in the street.
How much was the fine? Do we know?
We don't know, but it's between 75 euros and 700, depending.
So they're not that cheap then, are they?
Well, actually, that rule came in January the 1st, didn't it? So that I think we reported on the rule coming in that these guys are selling illegal stuff. And it's not just fining them for having that illegal stuff. Now you're getting fined if you buy it from them. And that came in. But I think this is the first person that's tangibly been fined.
Yeah, so this new ordinance came in, like John said, at the start of the year. And basically it's the first example, because I think people just got very comfortable buying these things. And I mean, maybe we've all done it as well. And so this is the first warning. But this was in Palma. I don't know how much they're going to enforce it in Marbella or Alicante.
Do you feel sorry for them, for these guys, these looky men who are just trying to sort of live their lives?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that it's not just them independently selling. I believe it's organised rings of this, and they're not really in control of their own destiny.
That's what I don't like so much, when they sort of drop them off somewhere in a car, and they've got all this. They actually have to buy the goods from these supposedly these Chinese kind of mafia groups that produce all this stuff. And it's obviously, if you run Gucci or you run, Loewe, you're going to be pretty upset if suddenly you're selling bags at 30 euros. I get that, but equally, these guys have got to live somehow, haven't they? And sometimes they're doing a reasonable service, I think.
Well, it's very sad, because these guys are at the bottom of the pyramid, so to speak. So like John said, they got to buy with their own money. They buy the stuff they sell, and then I guess they can keep the profit. I don't know, but the money goes up to criminal organisations. It doesn't,
Right.
No one pays taxes on this. And
allegedly, that's what I've read or heard. I'm not 100% sure that's the case. But I think it must be.
I'm sure the money goes to dirty, dodgy kind of corners of the economy. But the main sad thing is that this guy who got fined for buying the sunglasses, the seller also gets fined, and they get fined more, and they get their goods confiscated.
Right.
So I mean, it is illegal activity. It is contributing to organised crime, but at the same time, there's a lot worse legal activities going on in Spain than these guys selling their stuff in the streets.
But still, though, you've got a brand, you make something, you build your brand up over years, whatever it is, sunglasses or handbags or a newspaper. Like, we're 20 years next year. People nick your content and put it out, and you've got every right. Look at Spain for many years was the bandit in Europe, for films, for kind of music. They were just stealing everything. And like when England and Germany and France stopped 10, 15 years ago from, bootlegging, the Spanish were continuing to do it. And it got to the point where Hollywood stopped sending films over here, that you couldn't see all the latest films in the cinema here, because they were saying, well, hold on a minute, we're not going to give you our films because we know that you're just going to like bootleg it and you're not going to enforce it.
Wow.
So I think that, I kind of get the point, right? That, these guys are selling counterfeit stuff and bootleg stuff, and, is it good or bad for the brand? Because it might be that actually it's quite good for the brand in some ways, seeing a Gucci out there, the brand out there.
Yeah, it's like, you've arrived when people want to copy you, but your one is obviously going to be better than the fake, and only the more affluent customers can afford the real one, so there's more prestige maybe. But yeah, I totally get it. Like, you can't go around counterfeiting things and think it's okay. I just wonder if they were trying to make a statement to tourists with that.
Probably
Definitely.
making an example of this guy, and the police contacted the local journalist saying, look, we've done this to this guy, please go and promote and publicize the story.
It was probably a police press release out of Madrid, wasn't it? It must have been.
We don't know. But these things, they go on. But I don't know if you remember when Donald Trump brought his tariffs in against China. I was talking about this like 3 months ago. And the
MAGA hat, made in China.
Yeah. And all the Chinese manufacturers, they did this incredible thing. On Chinese TikTok, they started showing in the Chinese factories how they manufacture these luxury goods, how cheap they are, and how the same luxury goods will go to the luxury brands, to sell for $5,000 a pop. And that same product or something very similar made by the same hand, the same factory, will go to the discount bargain basement store. And they basically revealed, like pulled back the curtain on this. It's a kind of a globalized
same
scam.
goods effectively.
Yeah, same good. You're paying 20 or 100 times the price as this, and it's the same good. And this is what they exposed in order to to like put the wind up Donald Trump when he's trying to put
America first.
All his tariffs.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing. These guys selling on the streets. We've done stories where when they raid these illegal markets, especially one in Marbella, police went in, this might be last year, they went in and raided it, and they had photos of all these handbags lined up, all the merchandise they stole, and they had to bring in professional experts from the brands themselves to identify them.
Really, that's quite funny.
They were so
Well, you can't
good.
tell the difference.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. Yeah, imagine buying something for $30 from one of these guys, or euros, I should say.
Well, what you're saying is they aren't different.
No.
Really? Because the ones I've seen on the beach, they don't look that realistic.
Yeah, you couldn't say that's for all of them, but we've done stories in the past where they had to bring in experts.
Interesting. Okay. Well, big warning then, everyone. Don't buy this stuff from street vendors unless you want a fine.
don't
Oh, that's a
in front of the
bit
police.
harsh. Or if they're polite and they're nice to come along and have a chat and they enhance your evening, then I think do buy an elephant from them or
But what if you got a fine?
Yeah, if I got a fine, I would, from buying an African elephant. I would be a little bit disappointed if I was buying an African elephant for my daughter or a trinket. I would be a little bit.
I don't think they can't fine you for buying trinkets. That's only when it's a counterfeit good, right?
They fine someone for... Oh, I see. Yeah, okay.
I suppose, though, these guys probably don't pay taxes, but I mean, that's not, not everyone pays the
But
taxes all
we're
the
talking
time.
of
anyway.
tax and
Well, that's
legalities.
true. It's a big part of the black economy, isn't it?
Talking of economies and tax, why don't we move on to talk about the Gibraltar story? Because this is big news. There's finally been an agreement. I just want to know if you can just explain, a bit more
Our
about...
front page, isn't it?
Yeah, front page news.
Surrender or... I've been away
Surrender
for a
or
week.
triumph.
We weren't sure what was the sort of big story of the week.
Yeah.
And Walt sensibly, look, he said, come on, this is the big story. And it kind of is, isn't it?
This is in many ways a historic story. It's got this lovely, beautiful picture of Fabian Picardo, the Chief Minister of Gibraltar, and David Lammy, the British Foreign Secretary, doing a kind of a predator handshake, with like an arm wrestle handshake in front of the rock. Beautiful, most cringy PR picture you can imagine. But
Iconic.
Iconically cringy. But it is a huge big deal. I mean, it's been going on for years and years and years. These talks to try
5 years, no?
Yes, since New Year's Eve 2020, so 4.5, they had this deal in place, and then for some reason it's taken this much time to get it over the line. But it's a huge deal for Gibraltar. It's like the final piece but But people can't decide now that the deal's been announced after all this time and anticipation and rumors and gossip. People are very undecided if this is a good deal or a bad deal. Have you seen the deal, John, that they've got?
Yeah, so I've got various questions for you. One is, can we now effectively walk into Gibraltar without showing our passports? Can we go in? Can we drive in and buy things and come out? I mean, what's going to happen? Are we going to get because it's Schengen, right? They're joining Schengen. So are there going to be checks on what we bring, buy in Gibraltar and bring out?
This is the flagship benefit. This is the positive. The probably the biggest single positive is that now, well, not now, when it's all finalised, it'll take a year or two to get these things done. But when it's done, yeah, you'll be able to drive over to Gibraltar or walk over or cycle over.
Go to Morrison's.
Go to Morrison's, get your Easter eggs
PG
and whatever
tips.
you can't get here, PG tips.
Fags.
Well, that's a good question. We'll come back to that one. But in principle, you can go over, do what you want, come back as if you're going to Mijas or anywhere.
Or
Ronda.
Portugal, you mean? So the idea of Schengen, there's no border, so you can drive to France, you drive to Germany, you can drive to Portugal.
Yeah, and there'll be I think there'll still be some kind of border infrastructure there because you normally have that, but you'll just drive straight through, and under normal circumstances, no one will stop you. So that's the positive. I mean, once you're there, you've still got to pay in pounds. It's
And
still a
workers,
different
right? Or
country.
what about people who want to go and work there? I mean,
Yeah.
same deal.
Same deal. So at the minute, they have this thing where they just... I mean, to be honest, the actual current situation is pretty positive. You just flash your ID, whatever it is. No one even looks. People normally read the newspaper. You go through, and most of the time it's very frictionless. And actually, this kind of interim deal was actually a really good deal, but it wasn't sustainable. So the new deal, the workers will be able to just hop across as well. They're one of the other biggest beneficiaries. It's all the cross-frontier workers. There's 15,000 of them who go every day. So they benefit. All the everyone who wants to go to Gibraltar, not that you should do, but if you're living in the Costa del Sol or anywhere around, you can now just go there if you want.
Why doesn't Nigel Farage like it then?
So the negative, and this one, I don't know how bad it is. It maybe depends on your level of nationalism. But once the deal is sort of ratified, Gibraltar will enter the Schengen zone. I think technically it isn't a full member of the Schengen zone, if you want to be completely accurate, but in effect it will be. And what that means is if you're a UK citizen and you want to pop over to Gibraltar, UK territory, and wave a UK flag at the top of the rock and play with the monkeys, now you'll be flying, it's equivalent of flying to Spain. So then you'll need to stamp your passport when you go in. And
3 months, 90 days.
Yeah, so that rule will now apply to Brits who want to go visit a British territory. But the real kind of kicker that all the nationalists and the Farage types can't stomach is that there'll be dual checks from the Gibraltar, customs immigration people as normal. And then once you've done your checks with them, you then go to the Spanish section. And Spanish Policía Nacional will stamp your passport and check your documents when you're entering Gibraltar. And they will have the power to... stop British citizens from entering Gibraltar if,
But I mean, is this a sort of first sign that Brexit's sort of slowly coming to an end? I mean, is Northern Ireland and Ireland now is that border now going to become more fluid?
In Northern Ireland?
Yeah, I mean...
I got no clue about Northern Ireland.
But it's a sort of... to me, it feels like it's the first tangible unpicking of Brexit. Like this idea of having under 30s coming... backwards and forwards living. That's one thing. Another thing about this Gibraltar border fluid entering Schengen. Surely Northern Ireland's going to enter Schengen, right? They want all their goods to come in and out of Ireland, right?
Slowly but surely these things are getting unpicked. Yes, it's a good way to phrase it. But the problem with Northern Ireland, and I'm no expert in this topic, but you do have a lot of people who are very pro-Brexit, very British nationalist, and they wouldn't be happy to join the Schengen. So I don't know. I'm no expert on it.
You live near Gibraltar, so do you know the word on the street? So how are Gibraltarians reacting to this news?
I think they don't know what to make of it either. Because it's also very complicated. It's not just what we've talked about. There's 1,000 other things. And some of the little things that you don't think about now will actually have the biggest impacts, in 5 or 10 years' time, to do with tax harmonization and all these things. So one of the things you mentioned, John, about going to Gibraltar to buy your cigarettes because it's cheaper there. Cigarettes are cheaper, petrol is cheaper. And I go across the border to fill up my car in Gibraltar. It's so cheap. It's like €1 a litre. So it's beautiful when you fill it up and the litres and the euros go up at the same rate. And you're just like, oh, so nice. I think all this is going to come to an end. I think Gibraltar's had to give up a lot of its tax advantages in order to join to
have 15,000 workers come in and get tourism in and out easily.
So it's all the prices they've had to pay to get this border taken away so that people can come and go and goods can come and go. Because otherwise, the economy would be strangled. They've got a small place, 40,000 people. If they had a hard border where everyone's got to do biometric checks and all that stuff, it would have killed off the economy. So they've got this big prize of no border, but the prices to pay are Spanish boots bossing them around, which is the one thing they hate more than anything. And they have to give up a lot of their tax advantages, which was inevitable, I believe. But, I mean, that's going to create a lot of losers. A lot of people make money in sectors and businesses that take advantage of these tax differentials.
I think generally it's going to be worth it. And you make the point that there's a lot of nationalists in Northern Ireland. I mean, you've seen National Day in Gibraltar, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they are full on, like, pro-England. I've never seen so many Union Jacks. It's remarkable. St George's Day. I mean, they are so patriotically British, even though they're half Maltese, half Spanish. The mixture, where they come from, they are so pro-UK, aren't they?
That's why I've not met anyone who said, yeah, I love this deal. Not met a single person. But most people are like, when you ask them, what do you think? What do people think? You don't get a straight reply. I think most people at the minute, they're still digesting it.
Still waiting to see what happens. That's interesting, yeah.
Now, we're going to take a quick break from talking about the news to hear from our sponsor.
Sorry, no hablo español?
Looking for travel insurance you can understand? Staysure have been the experts in travel insurance for over 50s with pre-existing medical conditions for over 20 years. Get a quote today at staysure.com or call us free on +34 900 861 023 for a policy in plain English.
Staysure Expat is a tied agent of Ergo Seguros de Viaje.
Good. Well, segueing nicely now into the next story, which is donkeys. You know, what is there not to talk about with
Tony
donkeys?
Adams.
So donkeys. So Mijas has been known for a long time for its donkeys and donkey rides, people riding donkeys, and now that's stopped. Great. And they're actually building a giant donkey sanctuary.
Has it stopped?
Yeah, I don't think
think
it
it has stopped, actually.
I think this donkey sanctuary is like a salve, like
Okay.
kind of contain a little less. Look, we've done some nice things for the donkeys, but we're still doing the donkeys.
I thought it was stopping.
No, I think. Look, you know, you get a big fat sort of American arriving at the airport in Malaga and going to Mijas and sticking 30 stone on top of one of these poor donkeys. I think that's kind of frowned upon.
Well, no, that's coming to an end.
I think, but putting kids on the back of donkeys, that's still going to happen. I think the difference is they're going to really look after donkeys. There's been so much pressure on them that they're now got this. They're going to give them shade. They're going to make their lives a lot easier. They're going to feed them better. I mean, we've all seen these poor donkeys being whipped and how they're treated and how they have scars and scabs on them.
So they have brought in new regulations to try and kind of assuage the protesters. And one of them is no donkey rides for anyone over 80 kilograms. So I don't know how much we.
That means I'm out.
That's yeah.
I mean,
and
that's
the
a lot of people.
welfare.
Is our technician Keith under 80? He's quite a thin, healthy man.
Yeah, that's probably under 80.
Oh yeah,
Keith can hop on the
Keith
donkeys.
can get on a donkey, so we can send. Why don't we send Keith on a donkey for the olive press?
Yeah. But I think the welfare is important, isn't it? And animal welfare in Spain. Animal welfare in Spain doesn't always go hand in hand, does it? Because there's so many stories and there's so much tradition with bullfighting, that kind of thing. Do you think attitudes are changing to animal welfare?
I mean, all the complaints that we get, and as the Olive Press, whenever we do a story about donkeys, bullfighting, or animals, we get thousands of comments from the pro-animal, anti-animal abuse lobby.
Animal rights lobby, yeah.
And there's a lot of people, but they're generally they're expats and foreigners. I mean, Spanish people don't read the Olive Press, but it's definitely a pet peeve and cause célèbre for foreign people living in Spain.
But actually, if you look at Caroline, her point is quite an interesting one, because I think attitudes are changing. I mean, there's so many Spanish now have pets and cats and animals, and you know, where we live in the mountains in near Ronda. 10, 15 years ago, we had barking dogs all around us all the time, and you know, none of these dogs weren't registered. They didn't have chips. They didn't get their jabs. And we were writing every issue. We could have written a story about dogs on chains, and it's definitely better now. But because they've made it illegal to have a dog on a chain, because every dog has to be chipped, microchipped, every donkey, every horse. The Spanish, they're not doing this finding as much as they should, but the Spanish are slowly beginning to think, I don't really want to get fined
But there was
$1,000.
this animal welfare law that came in last year that does mean you can't leave a dog alone for more than 24 hours. You
Correct.
can't leave them on I'm not sure if anyone does that. You can't leave it on a terrace. You do have to
Correct.
chip them. Enforcement is the other question. Like if
Enforcement is the
who's
big deal.
checking-
Yeah. That's the thing. They're not necessarily enforcing it that much, but the idea is the laws that comes first, and then you have to slowly enforce it. But you have to educate people, and I think the Spanish, oddly, the question is bullfighting, because everything I read suggests that youngsters are getting more, not less, interested in bullfighting, are going more, not less. And so I would have thought, and I keep thinking that, and I've actually thought about writing a book about it, and I was going to call it No Bull, because I actually think that bullfighting's dying out, and it's going to die in my lifetime. But it's actually seemingly getting more popular. They're getting full of the bull rings, and I'm like, I don't really understand it.
It's subsidised, isn't it?
It was, but I think they've just ended that subsidy rule, haven't they? That they're going to stop subsidising it.
I remember the one that I went to, which was in Marbella last year. That was the first one they did in 9 years.
Oh, really?
So the trend isn't going down. I don't know what it's going, but it's coming back.
They say it's going up. And if you look, I think bullfighting on telly, did we not have a report recently that said there were, how many hundreds of thousands of people watched the Madrid bullfighting? No, yeah, it was the Ventus bullfighting festival on television. Michael Coy, who's our sort of bullfighting correspondent, he wrote a piece about how many people watched the television during those 10 days in Madrid, right?
I don't know how many people watch that particular show, but there's definitely a show on every Saturday at 2 p.m. called Toro los Toros or something like
Toro
that.
Lidio or something like that.
Something Toro and Toro.
It's not pleasant to watch. I mean, if you watch it on telly, it's really not nice to see, unless you really can stomach blood.
I never watched it, but it's on at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
The thing is, it's like
Which is odd for kids, isn't it?
Yeah.
such a part of the culture, isn't it? So, where's that argument between culture and animal welfare?
Yeah, I mean...
Like fox hunting in the UK.
Yeah, it's like fox hunting, and is it over fox? Because there's meant to be drag hunting, isn't it? But actually, if you talk to people who live in the country, they are still fox hunting, aren't they? Sort of quietly getting on with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's also a question of economics. Like going back to the donkey taxis, the families who make their living from the donkeys, they've been doing it for generations, and they have a lot of power. In terms of, I think the town hall in Mijas, they don't dare ban it because they know they'll A, have unemployed people, and B, there's just all them and their families who are probably some of the most hardcore, but like go back generations and generations in the area. They know they'll antagonize these people. They're afraid of them, to be honest. They have a lot of influence. And the same with bullfighting. It's a huge industry. And that's a factor. You're going to lose jobs. You're going to lose
part of the establishment,
money.
isn't it? Really. I mean, there are lots of arguments for and against. I always think one of the good arguments for it was that the bulls that are bred for bullfighting, they live for 3 years out in the fields, free range, and they can live like kind of kings really, and treated amazingly well. And then those areas that they're brought up in, which is sort of in Extremadura or the north of Andalusia, these big, huge fincas of kind of oak and cork trees where agriculture is no good because the land's not very good. And so therefore they protect effectively the cork trees. These are the sort of the lungs, if you like, of Spain, southern Spain. And because these bulls are allowed to kind of roam around, it gives a livelihood to the owners, the people who breed them. Okay, they do tend to be more aristocratic, I guess. That's another argument. But there are plenty of people who work in the industry, and over the years we've looked as a journalist for the Olive Press and for other newspapers in the UK and television. I've explored it, and going to watch and you get involved in it. There are lots and lots of people who work in it who do survive off it, and it's incredibly deep culture. It's very much part of the culture. It's a fascinating pastime.
But then ultimately, these little animals are slaughtered quite violently. So it's
it's pretty cruel. Yeah,
Yeah.
seeing them die. It's not pleasant.
You wouldn't justify. Well, it's okay to kill someone if you treat them really nicely before.
I mean,
it's a bitter pill to swallow, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's like going back to the Colosseum, right? Isn't it? I mean,
Exactly.
but if the idea is, and I'm sure you all hear these stories about how they blunt their horns and and how they drug them, but if it's done well, it has to be done within 10 minutes, and it has to be done cleanly and quickly. And I guess if you know, someone tells me you can live really well for 3 years and then we're going to put you out of your misery quickly in 10 minutes, and your body's going to go to be all these people are going to eat your meat.
Would you take that deal?
It'd be a difficult one.
And when you say quickly, they're going to stab you to death in front of
spectators
arena,
who are going to clap or boo depending on how well you do it. No, I mean it's a very strange. I mean, it doesn't exist anywhere else, does it? It's in Mexico, I think, and
they probably have some
Mexico,
stuff.
Mexico and a couple of other countries in South America. Which is why I say I'm amazed that it's still going. But so long as it's still legal and still going, I think we have to slightly sit on the fence and report on it objectively.
Well, as the Olive Press, I've said we don't have a position. We just report. Sometimes we'll cover it positively. Sometimes whatever the
mostly negative, isn't it? I mean, mostly we support protests against the Bulls.
We cover the protests, but since we've had Michael Coy on the team, we've been quite pro bullfighting.
Well, Michael Coy, a curious story. Michael, he's actually a barrister by trade, who then retrained as a journalist, and he was married to. I have to be careful what I say, but I think I'm going to call her Gypsy Queen from Rwanda. And they are very much connected to the bullfighting world. I mean, well connected. And so he's ended up being immersed in this kind of bullfighting culture much more than I've ever been.
And it's great that we can write that in English. Like an English person can convey this aspect of the Spanish culture.
Well, like Ernest Hemingway, Orson Welles. They really got involved in it, very fascinated by it.
I just wonder if 50 years from now, 100 years from now, it will still be, well, it's legal, and they have a good life, or whether things will move on. We'll have to wait to see, I guess.
I mean, I'm sure things will not be the same, but I imagine things will not go the way we expect them to, because they never do, really.
If I was a gambling man, I would have said it would have died out by now. But now I'm beginning to think maybe it's going to be allowed to survive, because if the European Union hasn't outright said, sorry, we're going to ban it, you want to be part of the European Union, you want to get grants from us, then you have to ban bullfighting, and they haven't.
Yeah, good point.
When is it going to end?
Good point, yeah. Okay, so bullfighting, sunglasses and Gibraltar. So we've got a really varied topic base today. But one thing that really stood out for me in this week's news was shocking scenes from you, John, in Ibiza. So tell us about what you saw when you went to Ibiza.
I mean, there should have been 2 days off relaxing, but I just caught this video in the Spanish press about these people living effectively in shanty towns in Ibiza that looked, to all intents and purposes, like they were homeless people, but turns out they were actually working in hotels, in restaurants, at the airport. I thought, this can't be true. So I was in Ibiza town and I decided to go for a walk. And after about 10 minutes of walking out of Ibiza town, still on the outskirts, I looked on my map and I found 2 or 3 areas which looked like sort of rough areas of scrubland. I thought, I'm going to head there. And so I walked into scrubland and I suddenly found like 3 or 4 sort of tent encampments, groups of people who... I thought, I was a bit nervous. I thought, how are they gonna feel about me going up to talk to them and taking films? And the first person I spoke to was on this like trampoline bed that he'd made, and he said, I work at the airport. I work in a car parking company at the airport. He showed me his hat, showed me his T-shirt from the company. I won't name the company because we don't want to get him sacked or anything. Not that he should do. He said, like last year I worked here. The boss had a flat for us. We had to pay him a basic rent and everything was great. And I was really happy. This year I arrived for a 6-month contract and he said, sorry, I haven't got anywhere for you to live. He said, I spent weeks and weeks and weeks trying to find somewhere. I couldn't find anything at all. He said, I found one place. He said it was, he said, I was offered, I think it was a place of 12 to 13 people living in a flat, all of them paying 400 euros each. So it was something like 5,000 a month or something for a shared 3-bedroom place where you're just sleeping on the floor or 3 in a bedroom, 4 in a bedroom. He said, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, so that place the boss was renting out, do we know what happened to that? Is he doing that on Airbnb or something like that?
I think almost certainly he's ending up doing it on Airbnb, and of course that's now illegal. And I think Ibiza is the first place where Airbnb officially withdrew 300 properties in March around anywhere in the world with an agreement, because Ibiza or the Balearic Authority said, look, if you don't, we're going to start a lawsuit. It's going to get expensive. It's going to get costly. Said, there's literally nowhere there's nowhere for people to stay. And apparently police are arriving on the island in the summer. They've got nowhere to stay. Lawyers are arriving to do work. They're saying they can't afford to find.
Even lawyers.
Lawyers say they can't find anywhere to stay. And a lot of the hotels are owned by the local family, the Matute family, people who work there. One guy said he was a restaurant manager in one of his hotels last year. He'd done it for 17 years, and he just packed up to become a taxi driver. So because in the hotel restaurant they're meant to be 9 staff. He said last year there were 4.
Yeah,
and he said and so they couldn't get the staff.
I mean, this is the ticking time bomb, isn't it? Because people say, oh well, there's a housing crisis, that people can't find a home, which is obviously a huge problem. But the other side of it is that the island will collapse. There'll be no one running the hospitals, no one running the restaurants, the bars. Literally, it'll be like a ghost island. It will not be able to function, and the economy will collapse.
Why would you? You just go somewhere else. Like, if I had to live on the street to do a job, I'd just go somewhere else to do a job.
This guy just said, I'm going to go. He said, I'm going to go to Mallorca. That's it. I'm leaving. He said, I've heard it's much better there. I can work at the airport in Mallorca, but I can find somewhere to live.
But why would you work so that you can live on the street? That's terrible.
It's inhumane.
Yeah.
But actually, interestingly, one of the hotels there, Nobu Hotel, that opened a couple of years ago, the owner of the hotel is the same guy that owns the Marbella Club, Puente Romano here. And when he opened the hotel, he bought a block of flats, or a block of, I'm not quite sure exactly what he bought, but he has confirmed this is true actually. A guy called Daniel Shamoon, you may have come across him or heard of him. He confirmed that he bought this block so that anyone who works at Nobu, whether they're working as chambermaids or in reception or in the restaurants, they're guaranteed somewhere to live. And that makes such logical sense, doesn't it? He said it was obviously hard. It's going to be tough because he had to buy this. Or I don't know. It's a long-term lease, or he's bought it.
But it's an asset then for him, and it means that his workers are safe.
Yeah, it means he can run his normal business without going out of business. It's business sense.
It's logical. It's absolutely logical, isn't it?
I mean, go back to the boss who had that apartment for the worker that you said now he no longer had it. So that guy, he's put it on Airbnb. He's probably making thousands a week. But you'd think if he's already the boss of whatever the airport company, the taxi or car parking company was, it's just even more money for an already rich person,
But he could get fined because the fines are bigger and bigger and bigger now. I think they start 5,000, they go up to sort of 500,000.
To be honest, I've known people do Airbnb, get caught, get a €30,000 fine and just pay it and carry on.
Because they make so much?
Yeah.
Was that in Barcelona? Because you lived in Barcelona for some...
Barcelona. That was a long time ago. This problem's been going on for 15 years now, probably.
And what's the solution?
Well, so we say ban it, and I mean, I honestly can't believe that they still are wrestling with this problem. Because I'm talking in 2012-13 when I first became aware of it. And we talk about banning Airbnb, but I think most Airbnbs, or at least a lot of them, are illegal anyway. And, I read a report, well, we did a report this week, that Malaga is still handing out permits for tourist flats.
I thought it stopped licenses.
That. It just doesn't make any sense. It's like, what is going on? Why do that? There's not even.
They
any
need the
benefit.
money because they charge. How much are they charging for those? I
guess someone pays for the permit, but it's either the one hand doesn't know what the other hand's doing, but it's just you need to put a stop to it.
But weren't there criteria? Like you can have it if there's certain things, it's in a certain area.
Yeah, so they've made all
separate
these
front
rules.
doors. And people, if a group of owners don't like it, then tough shit.
They've created all these rules to make it almost impossible to actually have a tourist flat, even if you do everything legally. But I don't know this for a fact, but I wouldn't be surprised if those rules have been talked about but not actually legislated. This happens a lot. They get announced. The media say this is going to happen. And then when no one's looking, the rule isn't actually, the law isn't passed or it's not enforced.
Did you think that kind of like hotel owners or people who own businesses should effectively be expected to pay or find accommodation for their staff? I mean, is there a point where, maybe the local town halls should create sites like a brownfield site? There used to be an industrial estate and no longer there. You say, right, as a part of that industrial estate, we will give you this land. You can build basic housing, simple housing, quite cheaply on the basis that you're going to give it to workers who earn under a certain amount of money.
It makes business sense because in the end, if you have a hotel and you can't get the staff, you're incentivized to do that. And actually, it's quite a smart way to make the private sector pay for the social housing. If you just give them the permissions, I'm sure these businesses, they got their confederations and their associations, they can band together and build the housing for the staff that
and you have, if you earn under 2,000 a month, say, then you can apply to get that accommodation. I mean, there'd be sort of like a ceiling, no?
I think even the market itself would regulate it. Like if you make these buildings, these homes to accommodate your workers, and then you price your workers out of it, it doesn't make any sense. So I think the market would take care of it itself.
But it'll have a knock-on effect, won't it, on property values, if you can no longer rent them out, all of these things in the economy. It's not an easy solution, but I think you're right, things need to be done.
I mean, the demand from abroad is the kind of the...
That's what's driving
out of whack, because it's not like a coherent market. It's always external forces.
And people are buying homes, particularly here in Marbella, because they buy these luxury homes. They might come here 3-4 times a year, but they think they can rent them out.
Yeah.
And they actually can't get licenses. They're not allowed to do it. So they then have to go somewhere, and somehow they do it through mates or through these dodgy sites, and they've got to, someone's got to clamp down on them, right? Someone's got to investigate it.
Or they leave them empty. I mean, if you're in the Costa del Sol, you see empty houses all the time.
And leaving them empty is very dangerous as well, because then you get squatters. So what do you do?
It's the other side of the coin, isn't it? And everyone loathes the squatters, but it's on the whole.
In some ways, they're doing a service, aren't they?
Well, it's two sides of the same coin. Obviously, you do get some awful squatters who are just the worst human beings on the planet. But without a housing crisis, you wouldn't have so much squatting, I would imagine. Sure. Although the laws do incentivize it.
Sure. Wow. Okay. Well, we'll have to sort of wait and see what happens with this Ibiza story, because it just sounds like it's going to get worse and worse.
I think it is, and I think we've already been reporting a lot on this, and we've had a lot of protests, haven't we, already? And the water pistols were out again last week when I was away. I mean, I thought, I don't know how I'd feel about it if I was sort of sitting in a restaurant. I'd come from Manchester and it was rainy and it was cold, and some protester came and sprayed me with a water pistol. I'd probably quite like it, I think. Are they going to get nasty? Have they turned nasty
I think
yet?
they are quite nasty. They had these housing protests in Mallorca and various towns, actually Barcelona as well. I think it was 2 weeks ago now. And there was video of a mob that surrounded a terrace full of tourists, and they were screaming and shouting at them, and the police formed like a little cordon to sort of protect these tourists. And it's ugly scenes, really.
You wouldn't want to sit there and eat with that, would you?
Apparently, so the video is quite funny. Some people like scurried away, and then a couple of people just sat and kind of stubbornly ate their dinner with everyone screaming in the background and kind of like smiling to each other.
Well, can you imagine a couple of likely lads from Newcastle or Manchester sitting there and these Spanish protesters come up?
Could be a fun mix,
Could be interesting. And do you think that could ever happen here? Because obviously we've still got this disparity between the tourist income and people coming from abroad and people that work here, but it's not as bad. But do you think
I'm a bit worried because I'm renting and my contract ends in October or November, and I'm not super happy with my flats. I've been looking around for something better, and I've come to realise that for the price I'm paying now, there's nothing. Could be the time of year. Maybe if I look again in the autumn.
It's a good time to look.
But it is worrying that I've so far been immune more or less to this housing crisis, living and renting in Spain, and not being one of these wealthy foreigners. But it could catch up with me pretty soon.
I mean, we're seeing it. I mean, definitely locally in Malaga, we're seeing it in Valencia, we're seeing it in Mallorca where we've got papers and readers, and Barcelona. Increasingly, we're driving into Barcelona. We've got a lot of readers online. So I think a lot of our readers and tourists and people who visit are seeing this.
Yeah.
And are kind of wondering, where is this going to end? What's the sort of, how's it going to play out?
How it ends or where it plays out, no one knows, but no one's got a solution, and things are going to get worse to the point where services collapse.
You have to drive people to rent their... I mean, it's a simple thing. You just have to make it easier for people to rent. You have to make the squatting laws tighter so that you can get squatters out within 3 months or 2 months like you can in England, or even quicker. That's surely number one. So people then feel secure about renting their flats long term.
Yeah, I mean, it all coincides. Not all these issues, but a lot of the issues coincide with the housing law that came in 2023, in May 2023. And, as Pedro Sanchez, as left-wing government, brought it in, and he's very much for the people. So the housing laws favoured tenants and tenants' rights.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's meant you can't get squatters out. And there's different kinds of squatters. Like if you break into a house, okay, fair enough, you're a squatter. But if you're renting legally and then you just stop paying your rent, you're not classed as a squatter. It's not legally. So there's different ways.
Or you have young kids. There's various things.
Yeah, different loopholes. And so you can't get these people out. And so the landlords, instead of thinking, and you can't also raise rent as well. And it all sounds quite good if you're a tenant, but the result is that private homeowners are just taking their houses off the market.
But if you could get them out, like if you could get a lot of them out and then started, then a lot more people, there'd be a lot more places available to rent, and so therefore the price of renting would come down, wouldn't it? It's basic supply and demand, but they've got to tackle the basics, the fundamentals. And Sanchez says, "Oh yeah, we're going to put 100% tax on people who buy properties," and these sort of crazy ideas that are never going to wash, are they?
Never pass that law.
It's never going to happen, and he should be tackling some of the really basic laws.
They need more just to build houses, because the population of Spain is now, I think, 12 million more than the time when I moved to Spain. 12 million. It's crazy.
It really?
Wow.
So it's grown like a hell of a lot then.
It was 40 million or under. It was 37 million when I came, or something like
is that immigration? Or is that...
Yeah, almost all immigration.
Yeah.
And so if you've got more people, but then you've got to build more houses, and it's not only Spain.
It's all immigration, because their birth rates really drop, right? So I think their birth rate's under 2 point.
Yeah.
It's under 2.2, isn't it? So
way on. It's
technically shrinking.
1.4, I think.
So it's one of the lowest. I mean, Japan's the lowest, I think, isn't it, in the world? But that's like almost as low as...
Korea's really bad. They're like 0.6. That means...
What?
You wiped out...
0.6?
In 2 generations, everyone's gone. But
Goodness.
Spain is 1.4.
Wow.
Which is, I think, the lowest in the EU apart from Malta. Malta's 1 point something, I don't know.
So basically, it's the migrants, and this is something that in our editorial meeting today, I thought we want to look into this, because it's become a bit of a hot potato. A lot of Northern European media groups are looking at Spain and saying, well, how come Spain's predicted growth is 3% this year? And meanwhile, so many immigrants and migrants are coming in. Apparently 1 million people applied last year to become migrants in Spain. And the biggest rejection rate in all of Europe, 18.7% made it in. But that's still... I don't know, 200,000 migrants came in, and somehow they're finding work, and it's creating business, and the economy's growing.
But so the economy is growing, but it's not growing per capita, which means people aren't getting richer.
That's also true.
Yeah,
So
so
people aren't feeling it on the ground.
There's more people, and there's a bigger economy because there's more people. But it's not that people are getting wealthier. It's just everything.
But do you think those migrants who are coming in? Some of them, and I'm hoping a lot of them are going into those sort of empty areas in the middle of Spain where the villages are dying out, where the birth rate is down. If it's 1.4 average, it's probably 0.6 in some of these places.
Yeah, there's no.
And that's where you want these migrants to go and live and reopen the shops and the bars.
I mean, in the end, it is also, like you say, supply and demand. Everyone wants to live in Malaga and Barcelona and Madrid. But if you do drive an hour, you'll probably find a house for 20,000, 30,000 euros. It's
completely true.
Wow.
It is supply and demand.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
If you want to live in, like a lot of the builders and people who work on the coast now come from the Serra near the Ronda. If you lived half an hour inside the Serra near the Ronda, let's say in, not Setenil because it's quite fashionable, let's say Alcalá El Valle, you would be able to find yourself a 2-bedroom flat for about 25,000.
Really?
And then if the road's working well, the Ronda road's working well, and you have a good run and you get the right time, you could be working in Marbella in about an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like
which is sort of doable, right?
Hour 10 minutes is fine, yeah.
So.
Malaga, which is so much in demand, there's all these little villages in the mountains around in how do you say it?
Arsakir.
Arsakir.
Arsakir. Not Arsakir.
You go around there, even 30 minutes from Malaga, and you can get a bargain.
That's where we first settled, actually, in a place called Comares.
Yeah.
And we looked on the map, and it looked like it was literally right next to Malaga City. We thought, great, we'll be in Malaga all the time, going to theatre and cinema and bars and restaurants. And then we hadn't noticed is on the Ordnance Survey map, the road that goes up into the Montes de Malaga where Comares is actually loops. So you've got this little loop like that. And we thought, well, what does that actually mean? What it actually means is it goes round the mountain into a tunnel and comes all the way around the mountain like that, all the way through.
Like a helter-skelter.
So it actually took like 45 minutes to drive down to Malaga.
And it's only a hill.
Right at the top of a hill.
I've driven past it and seen it. It's beautiful, right?
It's amazing, Comares, but it's so inaccessible. Like anywhere you go is 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And we got there, and it's quite a funny story because we arrived and we'd rented this house from a guy who was a flamenco guitarist, English teacher, and we thought, it looks amazing, really authentic. And we got there, and as we pulled up, there was a white Ford Transit van with an English number plate. We're thinking, it's parked in our space, so we kind of went up and. What's going on? Where are we going to park? We parked down here, and then realised that the house was semi-detached. Went next door, and there was this guy with shocking long blonde hair, blue eyes. I said, "Hola." He said, "Hello, mate." He's a guy from Greater Manchester. That's a terrible accent. But it turned out that our 6 nearest neighbours were all from Greater Manchester.
Wow.
And they sort of ended up in this. And we were like, did we come
report
all the way
prices
to
down a bit
Comares? It was very random, actually.
Interesting. And I bet it was hot up there as well.
It's hot everywhere at the moment, isn't it?
Well, at the moment, yeah. So there's a heat wave, right?
Yes, hot and sweaty.
And one of your stories was about the fact that this year, by the 2nd of June, was it, or by June, it's had
8th
the
of June.
most. Yeah.
So yeah, one of our most common themes, obviously, is the hot weather. But this is kind of ironic as well, because we always get a comment saying Spain's always hot in the summer. And like, we don't.
Yeah.
People go a bit crazy about this
No
stuff.
shit,
but
so,
yeah, you don't need to report on it being hot in Spain because it's Spain.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I mean, we would normally report when it gets like 40 degrees and there's orange
It's
warnings.
sensible reporting, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, things we don't say like this is because of climate change. We just write the weather's going to be a bit hot. But you got all these climate change deniers, and there's a lot of crazy people out there. But it is an argument that we can't easily dismiss. Is Spain hotter now, or has Spain always been hot?
Well, wasn't it the point that you were making was it was record temperatures?
Well, yeah.
There were the hottest days ever in the beginning of June, right? Ever before.
So this is what's interesting. So we're still in only June, and June normally, if you live in Spain, it's a bit nicer than July and August. And certainly the south of Spain, had the record for a number of days over 40 degrees Celsius in June, or by June the 8th.
And that's a horrible temperature, isn't it? I mean, I always think about if you double it, add 30, what's that, Fahrenheit? It's 110, isn't it?
And it's
thinking
humid heat.
That's
as well.
crazy heat.
But I think, so we had, the statistic was, by the 8th of June, we had 8 days of over 40 degrees in some parts of Spain, not everywhere, obviously. This is mainly in Sevilla area, which is always hot. But if you look at the statistics, it was all the other days over 14 every year combined, not just 1 year, only came to 4. So there's like one day over 40 in 2017, another in 2022, but nothing even combined was half of what it was this year. That's how crazy it is.
And what advice should we be giving people? I mean, our readers and people who come over here, we need to explain that you don't want to be walking around between sort of 2 and 5 in the afternoon.
Oh yeah, you can't go out. It's inhuman heat. That's what we said. This is inhuman temperatures coming to these parts of Spain, which triggered a lot of people in the comments. But I mean, this was what the other forecasters had said, and it was 42.9 in Moron de la Frontera, near Sevilla.
Which is ironically where the American air base is in Moron.
These stealth bombers fly over. So that was 42, and I mean that's the kind of temperature where you can't go out, and I don't think everywhere automatically has aircon. But the kind of the saving grace is that if you're along the coast, which is where a lot of people like to go if they're on holiday, it's not so bad.
Of course, you've got the sea air.
Yeah, you're 5 or 10 degrees a bit.
But if you go to towns like Carmona or Écija, I probably don't know if I said that right. It's a very difficult one to pronounce.
Someone's going to mention that in the comments.
Écija. Well, when you go there, they were obviously built by the Arabs or Romans, and then certainly the Arabs, the Moors. And the streets are so narrow, so you can go there in July and August, and somehow they're north-south facing. They're not east-west or whatever, or the other way around. They're east-west, so you get the early sun and the late sun, but you don't get sun in the middle of the day. They're narrow streets. It's kind of like an old Medina, and it's designed in a way so that the heat doesn't get in. So actually, it's quite shady. And
That's good.
They knew what they were doing, those guys.
They knew what they were doing. and the movement of water, there's a lot of fountains. And you go to the Alhambra, right? You see the movement of water and how it cools things down, right? It just naturally brings a breeze in, and
it looks like we're going to need it this summer,
I have seen a recent report. We haven't done a story on this because I haven't confirmed it, but that the long range forecasts for July and August are extreme.
Really?
I've seen a map. Well, this is the controversial thing as well. So there's a map sort of forecast for July, August, and it has the colours representing the temperatures. And there's a plume of bright purple, almost white purple, covering Spain and a bit of France. And one of the controversies is if these weather forecast agencies have started amping up the colours to make temperatures that aren't that hot seem hotter. This is a question I want to ask. I've asked one of my journalists to look into it. Because today, if you look at a map, if something's 25 degrees Celsius, which isn't very hot really, it's red.
Well, it shouldn't be red. If
it
it's
should
25.
be orange, I would think. And some maps depends on the service. But the question to ask is, 10 years ago, did they have the same colour scheme? Or have they...
But what's their incentive to scare us, though?
Well, obviously, the certain class of people would say they're trying to push a climate change agenda. maybe it's good for their business. Like people take more notice of them if they can sort of.
They look at these sites more.
Yeah,
they get more clicks.
So it could be. It's a question worth asking. We haven't got the answers to this question, but it's an interesting question.
Yeah.
And yet the year started sort of in lots of ways so well, didn't it? It was such a nice temperature at the beginning of the year. It rained a lot in March, but wasn't great.
All the time.
But it was nice and cool in April, and May was actually a really, really lovely month.
Yeah.
It's just sort of hit, like, didn't it? Beginning of June, it was like slam.
The other factor that people are talking about is the sea temperatures, because apparently, and it's hard to say if it's like chicken or egg, what's provoking it. But today, the sea temperatures, especially around the Balearics, 26, 27, the record's 28. Like the all-time
So it's not cooling down then, and that means it doesn't cool down at night. It means you get jellyfish, you get all sort of issues with that.
You get jellyfish. So this is the August temperatures in June, and that feeds back into other. I'm not an expert on these things. Another meteorological phenomena which creates. So you're also getting storms inland, and you get these huge hail chunks. Don't know if you've been seeing these videos online.
Yeah,
amazing.
Hail the size of golf balls and even tennis balls.
Like Dana, this kind of Dana effect, is it that?
Exactly.
Yeah, what comes from the Dana, but the hail's new. I've never seen that so big, and this they're saying has been a byproduct of the hot seas that are. I wouldn't like to sound scientific when I don't know it, but
the jellyfish are a big problem because you know, if you get a lot of jellyfish, that's going to put tourists off, right?
Well, yeah, I love to swim in the sea, and lately where I live, they've been getting these giant jellyfish the size of carrier bags.
Well, the Portuguese men of war.
I think they're not that one, but they're just as bad, and they're huge, and you don't want to. No. Someone said like they clasp your arm or your hand, they get their tentacles
and
around.
they really sting you.
And they sting, they give electric kind of sting, and that's a big turn off. That is.
If you get caught, you don't pee in it, right? That's kind of established now. There's this kind of famous thing. Yeah. Pee in my arm, please.
If you can pee, I think why not do it?
But I've been very lucky. I've been stung once by a jellyfish. But one thing I got caught by once. Have you ever stepped on a weaverfish?
No, that sounds painful.
My God, apparently there's a few around, and they sit underneath the sand, and they have a little point, and they're sort of waiting for, I don't know, whatever they eat.
Humans.
And you step on it, and they've got this electric shock. So it actually gives you a little, if you step on it, and it's like a jolt.
Yeah, we've done stories on this actually now.
Have we? Yeah.
They've got those here.
I stepped on one in Bantham in Devon in England, but I have heard they've got them.
They have them here. I think it's more in the north of Spain, Galicia, but they are also on the Mediterranean side.
Well, what about sharks? Because there was something recently about a shark.
Sharks, yes. So they had this. This must be like
some of our rivals.
But they had some footage of a giant. I don't know how big, like 12-meter shark just off the coast of Marbella, and you can someone's in a boat, so you can see the fin, and you can see Marbella, unmistakable. And this is bigger than Jaws. This is the biggest.
Not great
shark.
White though.
But of course, it's not a great white. It's a basking shark.
Is it basking shark?
Do you think we'd be ready? Let's say there was a shark and it attacked. Do you imagine that Marbella or Costa del Sol be ready for that? And in terms of,
you mean what they would do to try
like in the
pretend
film
it didn't
Jaws,
happen, or
when they tried to
get out the water?
People would go insane. I'm sure. I don't think they would handle it very well. I can't see that. I think because even this one video we did with the shark, and there's a basking shark, and we said very clearly it's a basking shark. We wouldn't be alarmist. We got 3 million views on that video, which is the best we've ever had.
Is that right?
Yeah, and people just love sharks, but.
I love sharks. It's not the Chinese don't like them because they do that fin soup, don't they? Where they just cut their fins off and leave them to.
But by saying I mean it's like a fear fascination.
Yeah.
It's not like as no one to cuddle them. It's like as in they're fascinated by them because they're so scary. And the thing is, you've had sharks forever in the Mediterranean. Great white sharks. We did an article on this. They swim around. They're out there.
And how many die from sharks?
Never. So the Mediterranean, just no one never was attacked. I don't know why or what the difference is. But if you go to the Red Sea, we've had a few people get munched over there. In the last
but not many. There's like more than 150 people killed by sharks every year. I'd be amazed.
No, it's like 5.
5 people.
Yes.
That's it.
But when they do get killed, it's spectacularly bad.
Yeah,
like in the film.
It's not a nice way to go, but it's a bit like a plane crash, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's horrible and everyone freaks out, but actually the chance of
absolutely minuscule. You get the bites. The deaths don't count. Obviously, the bites. So in total, with the bites, that's what people survive. I don't know what the stats are, but the deaths is nothing.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks for that. It's very exciting as usual, and look forward to the next news.
Yep. News never stops.
Great. Thanks very much, Caroline.
Thanks
Caroline.